funny feeling in your gut when you've already been at this moment and you know what's about to happen? The movies say it's a glitch in the Matrix or contact between you and another you from a parallel universe. Some people call it déjà vu. The story we have today is about two women whose life would collide in a rather eerily identical set of circumstances. Mary Ashford and Barbara Forrest were 20 years old and spent their last day dancing. They were killed on the same day of the year, May 27. Both bodies were found in the same park, and the prime suspect of their murders is a guy named Thornton. The only problem? The two murders are 157 years apart. Hey! My name is Detective Maple. If you like true crime stories and unsolved mysteries, hit that subscribe button because I'm here to bring tons your way. So drape your blanket over your head and let's get spookin'. The world was never ideal nor safe for women, may it be in the medieval era or presently in 2022. In the 1800s, when you're a woman demanding better rights, policies, and laws for your protection, people's heads are going to comically pop out and look at you like a lunatic. You could also just go dancing one night and be found dead the next day. Anyway, according to the people of Reddit, Erdington is your ordinary suburban place that is relatively quiet and peaceful. It has parks to jog around, and like any other city, Erdington has its own areas that are a little bit wilder than the other parts, and that's fine because it gives the city a personality. Of course, these people probably have not been born in the 1800s, or those who were conscious in 1972 all have forgotten that behind this city's quiet, silent, tame disposition is a history. Stories of actual people that send chills down the spine of those who remember it. The murders of Mary Ashford and Barbara Forrest. On the 27th of May in 1817, a laborer was strolling around Pipe Hayes Park like he might have had countless times before. The spring day was lovely. Blossoming trees were flaunting their colors, and flowers were greeting everyone with a great day. The grass may have been slightly misty, and the laborer sees what looks like blood. Obviously shaken by the overwhelming thought of what the blood and the footprints along with it could be, he follows the trail out of curiosity. In a water-filled pit in the park, he found the bruised and dead body of Mary Ashford. Possibly with a pattern of bruising on the body, the police investigation initially assumed that Ashford was sexually assaulted. After that, she drowned, which is just a heart-wrenching scene because drowned victims usually bloat until barely recognizable. Whoever did this to her is pure evil. To find out who, they had to trace the steps leading to Mary Ashford's time of death. This includes conducting interviews to establish a timeline and map out her last sightings. One person of interest in the murder of Ashford was her friend Hannah Cox, whom she went dancing with at this building before she was murdered. Cox said that around the wee hours of the morning, Ashford knocked on her door. She was there to pick up the work clothes that she had left. Then, she mentioned that she had been with a man named Abraham Thornton. After the dance, there were accounts of Mary with a company of Abraham Thornton around midnight. Thornton was a 25-year-old farmer, probably at the peak of his life, and it would be no wonder that 20-year-old Mary Ashford was smitten. When the police came to talk to Thornton, he admitted to having slept with Ashford consensually just before she went to Cox's house. But he did not confess to killing her nor having anything to do with her murder. Having had a short-lived romance with someone who is murdered just the night you met, the circumstances are lining up too well to ignore its implication. But that's exactly the only thing the police had against Thornton. Circumstantial evidence, which could mean something at times, but to convict someone for such a heinous crime without building the strongest possible case, that's just setting up the prosecution for a failure. They needed something more solid and physical, like a hair sample or a piece of fabric linking the suspect to the crime scene, or maybe even a witness of them together in the park. Thankfully, they found a boot print. Who wore boots in the 1800s, you might ask? Probably every other Erdington resident when it's muddy outside. But do you know who else that has anything to do with the murder case matched the boot print found near the crime scene? You guessed it, Abraham Forking Thornton. But no one cared, or I guess that's how the judges would say it. The boot print is not enough evidence. In hindsight, we all believe it's him, right? By the time of the first trial, the evidence was not convincing enough to sentence Thornton. Also, a reminder that this happened in the 1800s, when people were more interested in going according to the will of God, the fates, and destiny, rather than proper criminal investigations, court hearings, the justice system, and all those fallacies. I mean, where's the fun in that, right? Anyway, Thornton made puppy eyes, demanded a new trial, and convinced the jury that if God wanted to prove his innocence, he would win a trial by combat. If not, they can execute him by hanging. For whatever reason, Ashford's brother, who was supposed to battle for her, chickened out, and Thornton was released shortly after, just like that. Being in his 20s, of course, the man flies to America and disappears for good. Without any other leads to chase, the case grew cold as ice. Imagine the detectives' faces when all of their investigative efforts were trashed out as easy as a couple swing of swords and the only suspect is free. Justice was definitely not served. But something happened in 1974 that would give them the opportunity to make things right. On the 27th of May in 1974, a 20-year-old woman named Barbara Forrest was found in a ditch in Pipe Hayes Park in Erdington. The details of how she was found, the markings, or the positioning were unclear, but the police concluded that she was sexually assaulted and strangled to death. No mercy came from whoever did this to Barbara. The love she had for the children as a nurse and all the potential she had to make people's lives better were all but lost the day she was brutally murdered. Michael Ian Thornton was one of Barbara's co-workers and he lived nearby. It was a rather small town. Of course, it was natural for the police to ask him a few questions. Again, the details were unclear. If Thornton 2.0 was acting suspicious, or if his statements and timeline were even adding up for the police. But what we know is that the authorities would find blood on the pants he wore the night Barbara disappeared. You would think because blood was found on Michael's pants on the night of the murder, it would put him at the crime scene or at the very least involve him in the murder of Barbara Forrest. It would be a very clean-cut case. If not for one teeny tiny problem. DNA testing was not used in this decade. The police couldn't just sniff the blood and conclude to whom it belonged. Because of this, Michael Ian Thornton was acquitted. Although the crimes were 157 years apart, one could not simply ignore the eerily similar circumstances of Ashford and Forrest's death. For one, they were both taken advantage of before they were killed, and they were both found at Pipe Hayes Park in Erdington. Both women were having fun. Coincidentally, both of them liked dancing. It is easy to assume that this was a rare case of reincarnation, the history repeating itself with identical characters, places, and circumstances. Turns out, there is a fact that many still find hard to swallow, that they would rather take in the paranormal explanation rather than face the harsh reality. Whether you agree or not, the World Health Organization has estimated in 2021 that 30% of women worldwide have experienced sexual violence from their partners and non-partners. That's every 3 women you would pass by the street or work. That was what Mary Ashford and Barbara Forrest had been subjected to. Violence against women happens every day, every year, in almost every place. Yet, the date of their murders both being the 27th of May, the main suspects being Thornton's, is just a little too exact not to consider that something beyond our understanding could have taken place. Regardless, both of them were not able to find justice, and their perpetrators walked free, both of whom had the strong potential to commit the same crimes against other women. But what do you guys think? Were the deaths of Mary Ashford and Barbara Forrest history repeating itself? Or was it a mere coincidence of a brutal crime that became a wake-up call about how flawed the justice system is? Let us know what you think in the comments down below. In the next story, Lovella and Cruz finally agreed to adopt and bring an additional family member to their home, which was a surprising twist of 2021. Little did they know, a ruthless, vicious, bloody murder was awaiting them just 2 weeks before Christmas. Until then, up and out!